Got it. Okay. All right. So first, let me introduce myself. I'm Sherry Briscoe. I am currently the president of the Idaho Writers Guild. I've been on the board with the Guild for, let's see, 11 years now, quite a while. And one thing that we strive is to bring valuable information to the people in our writing community. So the Writer's Corner is one of the ways that we do that. These are always free workshops. When we do get back to being in person, these will be at local library locations, which is where they used to be. But for now, they're on Zoom. And Zoom is kind of nice in the way that it allows us to bring in speakers from outside of the area, and it allows people from outside of the area to join in the workshop. So the 10 ways.
What area are you based in?
I'm in Boise, Idaho.
Oh, good. So am I. Okay. I thought you were in Texas because we had a few people in Texas. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be making those local libraries.
No, we are in Boise.
Okay.
Treasure Valley. Yep. Okay. So 10 ways to start your story better. A good opening line is a powerful thing. How many times have you read a book when the opening line really grabbed you and you said, oh my gosh, I'm going to love this? Or just the opposite, you read the first opening line or the first paragraph or even the first page and thought, nah, I'm not wasting my time on this. And I've done both. So a opening page, especially if you are trying to get published traditionally, is paramount, because a lot of agents and editors won't read past page 1. And that's the unfortunate truth. But you also want to keep the reader. You want to hook them right away so that they will keep reading your book. If you've seen a lot of people in bookstores, they walk in and they see a cover they like, the title grabs their attention. The first thing they do is open it up and read the first page. Amazon, likewise, you can check out books, look for a book you want to buy, click on one, and it always says, open here, read this, and you can open and read the first couple of pages before you buy the book. So the opening is extremely important. It can set the tone for the rest of the book, and it makes readers stay through the end. In writing, as in dating and business, initial reactions matter. You don't get a second chance to make a first impression. So, page 1. So this is what I was just talking about. An opening line should have a distinctive voice, a point of view, a rudimentary plot, and some hint of characterization. By the end of the first paragraph, we should also know the setting and the conflict, or whatever that problem is that needs to be solved or fulfilled, unless there's a particular reason to hold that back. But these are things that agents, editors, and readers look for in the beginning. A lot of times we start writing and we just get carried away with all the setup and the backstory and who is this person and their traditional, everyday world. But that's not what grabs the reader. I mean, we want a little bit of that, but brevity is the key there. So build momentum is the first thing that you can do. What is the hero seeing, feeling, experiencing? Depth in writing is crucial to a story opening. But again, keep it lean, keep it brief. I can't recommend enough the class Depth of Writing by Dean Wesley Smith. He teaches it online. It's a 6-week course, one of the best classes I ever took. Really teaches you how to write an opening that will bring the reader in and feel immersed in the story. But part of that is using those 5 senses. What is your main character hearing? What are they doing? What are they smelling? When we describe something in a scene, it comes through the point of view, the POV character's filter. So if you're just writing what the day looked like, that doesn't connect us to the reader or connect the reader to the character unless you write what the character is seeing the day looks like. And they're basing it on their personal opinions and their beliefs. So that's how we really see this main character and start to identify with who they are. Your character should notice things he would notice and form immediate impressions based on what he sees, as well as who he is in the era in which he lives, in case you're writing in the future or in the past. What they see is impacted by their beliefs and opinions of things. Show the character reacting to what they're seeing, to what's happening around them. That's a great way to really bring that character to life in the beginning. Always ask your character why. Why do you want to do this? What's the underlying reason for your desire? And keep digging. I don't know how many of you saw the movie, The Man Who Invented Christmas. Love that movie, by the way. It's about Charles Dickens and when he wrote A Christmas Carol. And he's got it mostly written and he's going over it with his editor and they're talking about Scrooge, and his editor keeps asking, well, Scrooge is going to turn around in the end, right? He's going to become a better person. And at that point, Dickens was saying, no, he's not. He's a terrible person. He's awful. People like that don't change. And his editor kept saying, but why is he terrible? Why can't he change? And they just kept digging down deeper and deeper of why Scrooge was the way he was. And when you get down to the bare bones of it, the roots of it, of why a person is the way they are, then you can see what you can do to make him change and it be realistic or feel reasonable. So always ask your characters why. Why do you think this? Why do you believe that way? Why do you act that way? It's a great, great tool to use. And in building momentum, of course, we open with the main character in the stability of their world. And then the world becomes unstable after the introduction of the inciting incident. Now, a lot of people will think that the inciting incident needs to be something big and major, an earthquake, a shooting, a murder, whatever, but it doesn't. It can be something as subtle as someone who's unhappy with the way their life is right now. They're unhappy in a marriage. They're unhappy with their career. They know they need to change, but they don't know what to do. Or something that's missing in their life. What's happened, and then what happens that sends that character on the journey that they're going to take throughout this book. So the character in their natural world, something happens. Maybe it's even just a realization of, hey, I'm not okay with this anymore. And so they struggle to restore stability in their life. And in the end, a new stability is established. So this little formula here, stability plus inciting incident equals the instability that they have to deal with, and then struggle to resolve instability to a new stability. So this is a great little formula you can use. So number 2 is resist the urge to start too early. When I first start writing a novel, I will just start writing. I know basically, I do plot and I use plotter to plot, but still I start writing and writing and writing. And usually what happens is when I'm all done and I go back and look at it, the first chapter, sometimes even the first 2 chapters, aren't where the story begins. So I delete them or get rid of them. Maybe I can pull that information in a little bit at a time later throughout the story, but make sure you start where the story starts, where the reader wants to start reading. I almost always delete at least the first few pages that I write, because that's just kind of gets me into the flow of my character's world, but it's not necessary for the reader. So don't open with backstory or history or boring narrative. This is where you introduce the protagonist. Show her reactions to the inciting incident. Those reactions reveal and define her personality, creating that first impression. So, and again, brevity is the key here. Instead of a long physical descriptions, pick a telling detail. Characters are best revealed by their actions instead of exposition. Don't tell us all about them. Show us the character. Something happens. How did they react to it based on who they are at that time? What's going on in their life? The inciting incident is just a trigger. It's something that happens that sets the whole story in motion. One of my favorite movies, it's an older movie from the 80s. It's called American Dreamer with Tom Conti. I don't know if you've ever seen it. If you haven't, you should watch it. There's this woman, she's married, wonderful life. Her husband's banker. She's got 2 little boys. Everything's just perfect. And she reads these, like spy novels. And there's a contest to write the ending to one of the novels, and whoever wins gets to go to Paris to meet the author. And she wants to go so bad, and she loves to write. So she writes and she wins, and she's so excited. She gets to go, and her husband is like, no, you can't go. Your writing is meaningless. You need to be here and be my wife and take care of the house and the boys. And he doesn't see her at all. And this is where she realizes that her life is wrong. It needs to change. And she leaves him. She goes to Paris. It's hilarious. But sometimes that inciting incident can be just a little thing like that, with the husband saying, no, I don't give you permission. Well, all of a sudden she realizes she doesn't need his permission. She can do it on her own. Okay, 3, remember, small hooks catch more fish than big ones. If the opening hook is too big, the rest of the book may not be able to live up to the expectations of it. The same if it's an unusual or an odd opening. Start with something small that you can build on and build up as the story goes. So that first inciting incident is actually better if it's something small and subtle. An inciting incident can be just, like I said, the realization that the character has a problem, a small dramatic problem. It doesn't need to be big. It's better to be something small and dramatic, a small surface problem that leads to a bigger problem. So that's something to think about. What can be going on in their life that makes them realize it's. I was watching Grey's Anatomy once, and there was a guy that was in a car wreck, and he came in and he was paralyzed from the neck down. And through the whole show, that whole episode, they kept asking, do you know who you are? Do you understand what's happened to you? Do you want to live this way? And it even got me thinking about where I was in my life at that time when I saw that show. And was I happy with everything? And sometimes we just be so numb to everything. We're just so used to it. We take it for, take it for granted that we're here and there. But then all of a sudden, when you're forced to really look at it, do you know who you are? Do you understand what's happened to you or what's going on in your life right now? Do you want to live this way? And that is just a realization that your main character can have, and that's the inciting incident. Okay. Oops. 4, open at a distance and close in. So think of what the camera sees. I talk about shows a lot because more people watch TV and movies, let's face it, than read books. I read a lot of books, but I also watch a lot of TV and movies. So that's something that most people know more in common. But think about what the camera sees. In this instance, the camera eye is your protagonist. But the overall objective is to engage the reader. So you can use cinematic techniques. And there are 3 really good ones that you can use here to help you with the opening of your. You can start with a brief establishing shot. Show where your character is using sensory detail. Or you can start in the middle of something happening. Or you can choose the appropriate camera angle. Now, I used to do a lot of screenwriting. And in screenwriting, when they develop a story idea, they call storyboarding it. So they draw out each scene and put each scene up in stories, in pictures around the room so that they can look at them and maybe move them around when they need to. But if you think about that each scene that you write has to be drawn in a picture. What are we going to see? And that's what you need to write so that the reader is seeing exactly what you're writing. That way you stay in control of the reader and they're hearing the story you want to tell. So everything that they can see on the screen is what you need to be putting on the page. So start with a brief establishing shot. An establishing shot is what it implies. It establishes the scene. Show your character where they are using those sensory details. Think about the locale, the weather, the time of day, the year. Setting is crucial. Ever see a movie scene that doesn't show the setting? Of course not. You'd be staring at a black screen. So we don't want that. Readers can't follow your scene if you don't show where your characters are. And you do that by having your character move and interact with their surroundings and react to their surroundings. So again, keep it brief. The second one, starting in the middle of something happening. Readers don't want author interference. Resist the urge to explain to them something. Just show it and fast forward to the interesting stuff. There's nothing riveting about watching a character wake up and brush their teeth. Okay? And the third one, choose the appropriate camera angle. What is the point of the scene? What do you need to show your characters doing? And what key plot point do you intend to reveal in this scene? This will help you determine the type of shot you should use. If you need to reveal small details, a close-up shot. You may want to zoom in to show something important or pull back to reveal the bigger picture. It helps to work backward from your high moment. So it's all about making your reader notice what you want them to notice. And you do that with those details, with that depth in writing. Avoid getting ahead of your readers. So one of the easiest pitfalls in starting a story is to begin with an opening line that is confusing. You know, a lot of times we think, well, that's okay. This is a great line and I'll explain it in depth a little farther down. But if the reader doesn't understand that first line, chances are they aren't going to read further down to find what it means. So make sure that it makes sense to the reader. If they're confused, they're not going to keep reading. A good way to start a story, especially if you're writing mystery or thriller or suspense, is to open with a minor mystery. Present the reader with a puzzle. That can be highly effective, something that needs to be solved. A trouble can be something small or subtle in the beginning. Thelma and Louise, their inciting incident was her realizing that she was in a bad marriage and she needed to get away. You can build on that story as it goes, as long as you start out from a point that allows that. So you don't want to have too big of a inciting incident in the beginning. Seven, keep talk to a minimum. It's hard to connect to a reader if you open with dialogue before they know who's talking. They need to know the person at least a little bit before they start following them in dialogue. You can open with one line of dialogue if you do it right, but keep it short. It's better to have a little bit of a setting introduction and character introduction before you start the dialogue. So that's something just to keep in mind. And be mindful of what works. Stephen King said, if you want to be a great writer, you have to do two things. You have to write a lot and you have to read a lot. He reads like 80 books a year. I'm a slow reader, so I can't read that many, but I am getting to where I am reading a lot more than I used to. And I do keep track of what I'm reading, and I'm getting my numbers up, but not close to 80 books a year. But I do find the more I read, the more I am aware of what works and what doesn't work. And when I read a great book that I absolutely love, and I love the way they did it, and their pacing was fabulous, and their character description was just the best, then I can look at that book, I can deconstruct it, and I can see what did they do that made this book so great that I can copy, that I can use that system, that I can write in that way. So reading will be the best school you'll ever have on writing. Read, read, read. You'll see what doesn't work, what does work, and what they did right or wrong. So I can't say enough about that. Deconstructing a book, I think we've had a couple of classes on how to deconstruct a book too. If you're don't feel comfortable doing that, or you're not sure how to do it, we have classes on that once in a while too, so stay tuned for that. When in doubt, test several options. I've done this, and I've seen a lot of other authors do this as well. Maybe they've got a book cover design and their graphic designer gave them 2 or 3 different options, and they'll put them up on Facebook or wherever their social media is and ask the public or their readers, their fans, which one do you like the best? Which title do you like the best? I've done that. I've had several title options, and on my author Facebook page, I'll say, which one do you like the best? And I get a lot of feedback, which really helps me, because while I might think something looks good, doesn't mean my readers do. And I want to know what my readers like, what will entice them more to pick that book up and read it. So a title, a cover art, an opening line, these things are great to put out there and test several options with your readers. Or also, if you have a critique group, wonderful place to do that as well. I have my critique partners give me a lot of feedback, and yeah, I'd be lost without that. And 10, revisit the past. So once you get the story all done, and I have done this, you get to the end and you realize the story didn't maybe go quite in the direction you thought. So it's better to go back and write the opening that's better for the story now as it is, because there might be some key features in the beginning that need to change based on how the story ended. So that's something you need to always go back to the beginning when you're done and make sure that it still is in line with the story you've finally written, your final draft, and your ending. Sometimes the story evolves just so significantly during that writing process that an opening line, no matter how brilliant it was, no longer applies to the story that follows. Always go back to the beginning. So that, openings to avoid, opening with a dream. If you read that, it's really confusing. If you open and it's all a dream, and then all of a sudden the person wakes up and you don't realize that. And so then you're going, what's going on here? Or with an alarm clock buzzing, that's not always the best way. Being unintentionally funny. Now, if the book is a humorous book, then that's fine to open with humor. But if it's not, and just kind of came out accidentally and it doesn't really fit and it feels out of place and it doesn't fit with the rest of the book, then you don't want that. Too little dialogue or too much dialogue. Again, there's a fine line there. And opening with dialogue when we don't know the characters yet. That's really something you should stay away from. Stephen King, these guys that are already established can open a book however they want, but you and I can't. We're not that established. We're not that successful yet. So right now we need to follow the rules. We need to be aware of what works best and what we can do. So there's just some of my contact information, and I would like to open this up to you guys now and questions.